Line. Hope you're all okay. So today we are going to follow on from what we were doing about the Wall Street crash to have a look at how that then leads into a period whereby the Nazis start to become incredibly popular and get much closer to power than they have before, and look at how the impacts of that terrible economic crisis help them to get there. So the first task today is you've got little quizzes to do. Obviously, depending on which class you're in, this code may be different, so please make sure you actually just use the one that is on Show My Homework rather than what you can see on this video. But your first task is just to do that quiz and see if you can do it and get full marks. So if you don't get full marks the first time, keep having a go until you can. Okay, so as we saw last lesson, this Wall Street crash, this economic crisis in America, has global ramifications, which end up causing real problems for Germany in particular, and as I say, basically bringing down effectively the Weimar Republic and democracy in Germany. And the reason for this is because all of those impacts, the political, the social, the economic, they all connect and they result in this outcome. So, for instance, let's just quickly talk you through. We start off with an economic problem, the Wall Street crash. Okay, the American share prices plummet, the stock market collapses, and America loses billions. Okay, now because America is suffering economically, what's the first thing they do? They recall their loans. And if you remember, thanks to the Dawes Plan, the Young Plan under Stresemann, Germany is basically being propped up by American money at this point to try and get back on their feet. That recovery is pretty much instantly undone when the Americans say you've got 90 days to pay those loans back with interest or else. Okay, so suddenly all of that $25 billion of investment that's gone into German businesses has to be paid back immediately. Okay, which obviously is a disaster. Now, that leads to lots of companies going under, and it also leads to issues with banks, because a lot of the banks, they did have stock market interests, they had connections with America. People start to panic that the banks are going to lose their money. So everyone goes to their local bank, as you can see in this picture, to get their money out. The trouble with that is the bank can't cope if everyone gets their money out at once, so the bank collapses and savings are lost. Meanwhile, companies are falling apart, they're losing money, America's not trading anymore, no one's really trading anymore, which means that they are having dire times as well, more economic problems. If your business is struggling, you've got two options. You can lay people off or you can cut their wages. Either way, your workers are going to be having a bad time. Okay, and what that results in is widespread poverty all across Germany. So lots of unemployed, 6.1 million at least. 1 in 3 people do not have a job in Germany by the early 1930s, which is enormous. To put it in context, the normal sort of unemployment rate in Britain is below 10%. Obviously, it's higher at the minute because of the corona sort of crisis, but generally it's much, much lower. So 33% is absolutely crazy levels of unemployment. All of those people that are unemployed or have had their wages cut, they can't afford food, they can't afford homes. That leads to homelessness, that leads to rising crime, it leads to a whole host of social problems. So the economic crisis leads to a social crisis too, where people's lives are terribly impacted. Now, the trouble with that is when people are suffering, when they are in crisis, when crime rate's gone up, they've lost their home, they can't afford to eat, they have no job, they look to the government to help them. And if the government doesn't help them, which the Weimar Republic certainly didn't, they're going to look elsewhere. They're going to turn to extremism in desperation. There's a reason during the Stresemann years the Nazis did so poorly in elections, and that is because people, they didn't need them. All right, they didn't need extremism. Stresemann and the Weimar Republic were doing fine. The moderates were on top of things. As soon as things get bad and the moderates no longer seem to be fixing your problems, people turn to extremism. And the Nazis were there and waiting with open arms. So, just to show you how dramatic this sudden change in fortune is for the Nazis. So, as you can see, 1928, the Nazis have really, very low vote share. Okay, that election there. They spent all that time reorganising, polishing, trying to become a more electable party, go from the bullet to the ballot. Okay, but they only win 12 seats. People don't need to vote for them in 1928 because the Weimar Republic is doing okay. But look what happens 1930, we shoot up, and then suddenly 1932 in July, we've gone from 12 seats in 28 up to 230 seats in 1932. Just a few years' time, and look at that difference. Okay, and what is the one thing that has happened to change this? It's the Wall Street crash. So you can see from this graph just how important the crash was and the depression was in leading to the Nazis gaining more support. However, what you might want to think about is the fact that this is a kind of a push and pull kind of situation. The Great Depression pushes people away from the Weimar Republic because they realise they're not helping them, they're not doing what they should be doing, and they lose confidence. Okay, it pushes them away. But what pulls them to the Nazi Party in particular? What is it about the Nazis that means that people turn to them? And that is what we need to think about today. What is it about the Nazi Party that people liked? Okay, so we know people are fed up with the Weimar Republic. They aren't solving the problem. Heinrich Brüning, he gets known as the Hunger Chancellor, okay, because his solution is to massively raise food prices to try and protect farmers. Obviously, that just means people can't eat. To cut benefits and to raise taxes. So he gets nicknamed the Hunger Chancellor for all the poverty and suffering his policies lead to. On top of that, because the other parties don't agree with him, the Grand Coalition falls apart and he's unable to make policy. And he has to rely on Article 48 and the president, who at this time is Hindenburg, to pass decrees in order to get anything done. So the Weimar Republic has just completely fallen apart. Okay, they can't deal with this. And if you remember, it was only about 10 years before that we had the hyperinflation crisis, and they couldn't deal with that either. So basically, people in Germany look at their government and they think, wow, these guys are useless. They can't deal with economic problems. So don't want them anymore. They think they're weak. All right, they've been bullied by other countries for too long, things like Versailles, etc., and they want an alternative. Hitler and the Nazis provide that alternative, and we're going to watch a little video now just to find out a little bit more about why.
A Nazi Party member recalled how the German people turned to the extremists.
Swarming with unemployed, now nearly 6 million of them, all over the land, young spirits were rearing up in defiant protest against the wretchedness of a life that their fathers seemed to have spoiled for them. Whether they marched with the Nazis or shouted the battle cry of the communists, they were resolved on change, on a new order.
Part of the appeal of the Nazis was that they seemed to offer unity behind one leader, who promised the decisive action the government couldn't deliver. One man remembered the effect hearing Adolf Hitler speak had on him.
There was only one thing for me, either to win with Adolf Hitler or die for him. He who gets to know Adolf Hitler with a pure and true heart will love him with all his heart. He will love him for Germany.
When people are in trouble, they look for someone to blame. Hitler targeted Versailles, democratic politicians, the Jews, and communists. The Nazi Party's paramilitary wings, the SA and the SS, seemed to offer order and discipline at a time when law and order appeared to have broken down. One eyewitness remembers,
"What really engaged me was to feel the posture and expression of the SA. Never in my life have I seen such a sense of trust, so much dedication, so much unity of feeling."
the Nazis seemed to want to help the unemployed and the poor. They promised Arbeit und Brot, work and bread. Their plans for the unemployed were to put them to work, rearming Germany. The Nazis offered to give Germany back its national pride. The communists in Germany were also increasing their support. Their solution to the Depression was a people's revolution, like the one in Russia in 1917. But many Germans feared that the violence of the Russian Revolution would be repeated in Germany. Businessmen and industrialists would have had most to lose from a communist revolution. Many donated large sums to Nazi Party funds because they promised to destroy the communists. The industrial tycoon Fritz Thyssen later wrote,
I have personally given altogether 1 million marks to the National Socialist Party. I believed that by backing Hitler and his party, I could contribute to the reinstatement of real government and orderly conditions, which would enable all branches of activity, especially business, to function normally again.
the money the Nazis got from men like Thyssen funded a lavish and modern propaganda campaign. And the Nazis were masters of propaganda. Hitler campaigned tirelessly, flying around the country, speaking at several meetings in a day. The Nazis mounted huge, impressive rallies, and their posters were everywhere. This one, Death to Lies, shows the muscular arm of the Nazis grappling with the snake of high finance and with Marxism. Unlike the communists, the Nazis appealed to a broad range of people, but they didn't actually commit to a programme of government, so it was hard to pin them down. In 1932, Germany went to the polls. The Nazis became by far the largest party in the Reichstag, but they didn't have enough seats to form a majority. To get to this point, Hitler had exploited Germany's economic and social ills. His next step was to exploit Germany's constitutional weakness.
Okay, so lots and lots of reasons in there why people liked the Nazis, and I'm going to talk you through them now. But basically, the fundamental thing is the Nazis promised what people wanted. All right, you can see a poster here, Arbeit und Brot. Work, Arbeit, and Brot, bread. Okay, work and bread, the two things that people want more than anything. Food and jobs, and Hitler promises them those. Okay, which is really all anyone wants at this time. Okay, so there's a couple of reasons, big reasons why the Nazis are so popular, and I'm going to talk you through them now. These can broadly be broken into four major categories. So one of them is Hitler's own appeal, so Hitler himself. One of them is the SA and why people like them. One of them is propaganda, which I say is hugely important in the Nazi kind of campaign efforts. And the other one is just Nazi organisation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through and give you a few sort of key ideas about each of these four things, okay? And while I'm doing that, I would like you to make a few bullet point notes under each category, okay, and next to each thing. If you can't print the sheet off, just write headings in your book. So Hitler's personal appeal, propaganda, the SA, organisation, whatever it is, just so you have these notes in your book, okay? So I'm going to talk you through these now. So we'll start with Hitler's appeal, okay? Now Hitler, he is, as we've said before, he's a really charismatic figure. Now these days, we look at a character like Hitler and he's the most evil man in history, as far as we're concerned. Why on earth would anybody want to vote for him? But in the 1930s, that was not how Hitler was seen at all. All right? He was very, very popular. And we already know he's a brilliant orator. He speaks incredibly well. He's very good to listen to. And he's also just seen as a strong figure. So if you think of someone like Trump, okay, lots of flaws, of course. But the people that vote for him and like him, almost like him because of them. They say, oh, he's like this strong guy. He's not afraid to tell it like it is. He's different to other politicians. He's exciting, etc. Hitler falls along those lines. All right, Hitler is someone who's a bit different to the other politicians. He's an interesting character. He's a bit of a celebrity. People really like him. He's just very popular. Okay, and he kind of tries to present himself as the man that will save Germany, the man that will make Germany great again, to borrow another Trumpism. All right, so Hitler. So I'll give you an example. When he would give a speech, Hitler actually needed to wear glasses. His eyesight wasn't very good. But when he gave a speech, he would have it printed in a giant font so that he didn't need to wear glasses to read his speech. Okay, and the reason he did that is because he didn't want to show any kind of weakness, any kind of physical flaw. He wanted to appear like a sort of Superman kind of character. All right, perfect eyesight, amongst other things. He wanted to be seen as this leader that will save Germany. All right, compared to the Weimar Republic, who are, as I say, squabbling amongst themselves, failing to take action. Democracy is slow and weak, and nothing is getting done. Meanwhile, Hitler seems to be this strong, single leader. Remember, a lot of people in Germany were kind of distrustful of democracy anyway, right? They liked having a single leader, like the Kaiser. Hitler offers that single leader. You know, that's one of his big kind of promises, that he is going to be this strong, decisive figure. And as I say, he really milked this. He knew that he was popular and he knew he had a lot of appeal. So he tried to speak to as many people as possible. So, for instance, in 1932, he runs a special campaign called Hitler over Germany, Hitler über Deutschland. Okay, you can see in this poster. And in that campaign, he had chartered a plane and he flew around the country giving lots of speeches in a single day. It got to the point he did over 100 people in one day flying around in this plane to give lots of speeches. Nearly 500,000 people. So he really did make use of his popularity, and he was seen to be everything Germany needed. This kind of Superman figure who was going to save the day. He was everything the Weimar politicians weren't, and he was going to fix all Germany's problems. Another one of the Nazis' kind of big appeals was the SA. Now, if you think the SA, in the past, we've kind of looked at them as sort of thugs, all right, just violent men who just kind of beat people up, and that's what they do. Now, obviously, that is a big part of what the SA did, but during the lean years, Hitler worked on trying to make them a little bit more about discipline, and put the emphasis away from just violence. Okay, if you remember, he got rid of Röhm as well. So by 1930, we're just under 500,000 SA men. There's a lot of them, but their whole image is about discipline and militarism. All right, they're wearing uniforms, they're marching, they have different ranks. Okay, and the whole thing is they're supposed to convey strength and organisation. All right, and we've already talked that the crime rate has absolutely skyrocketed. The government seemed paralysed by indecision. Germany has been feeling kind of humiliated and weak for years because of the way their military was cut down by Versailles. The SA, these marching, militaristic, disciplined, troop-like figures, a lot of people are going to look at that and think, wow, that's what we need. We need that strength. We need that discipline. They'll stand up for Germany. All right. And again, think back. So part of what appeals about Hitler is Germany misses the imperial days when they had a Kaiser. It's the same thing here. They miss being that great military power, one of the strongest militaries in the world. They were humiliated by Versailles. They want to get back to that, and the SA help hark to that. So the middle classes will look at the SA, they'll think, okay, they seem respectable and militaristic and like strong, and something that I would like to vote for, something that will protect us from all the danger that is out there, not least the communists. The SA also appeals to the workers, the working classes, for a couple of reasons. Number one, they give men who don't have a job, which, let's face it, is a lot of people at this time, an outlet. It gives them something to do, something to join and be a part of. They also run soup kitchens. So a soup kitchen is a sort of, it's a place that makes soup and gives it out for free, basically. So if you are unemployed and you can't afford to feed your family, you might be able to visit a soup kitchen to receive some free food to keep you going. And the SA would run those, which again is going to appeal to those who have lost their jobs and are struggling. So loads of reasons the SA is going to be appealing to the middle classes because of the militarism and the discipline, I'm sure, and so on. All right, they've got lots going for them here. They also are still up to their old tricks. So they're disrupting opposition parties, they're tearing down posters, they're intimidating other candidates, disrupting communists. So there's a lot of fighting still going on with the communists. The communists have their own kind of military group, paramilitary group, called the Red Front Fighters, and the SA are involved in fights with them quite a lot. Okay, there's one particular one in Hamburg in 1932 where actually 18 people die. So they are still being thugs in some ways, but they are also projecting outwardly this impression of militarism and discipline and order, which is going to appeal to a lot of people in Germany. The third big thing the Nazis have got going for them, and this is something that kind of runs throughout the whole Nazi period really, even once they are in power, is their skill at propaganda. All right, they are fantastic at propaganda, and they use it to great effect. So the man who's been put in charge of the propaganda at this time is a guy called Joseph Goebbels. Okay, we've come across him before. He was a Gauleiter in Berlin. Around the time of the Bamberg Conference, he was actually going against Hitler because he was much more socialist than nationalist. But Hitler won him over at the Bamberg Conference, and he became one of Hitler's greatest supporters. And as I say, and he is a master propagandist, and he uses every method he can to get the Nazi message out. Now, they can afford to do this because of all that funding that Hitler's managed to secure from big business owners like Krupp and Thyssen and Bosch. All those companies that are giving him a whole bunch of money, it's being poured into this modern and attractive propaganda campaign. So he uses things like the radio, okay, new technology to kind of get their message out. Posters, the old classic, all right, using simple messages, Arbeit und Brot, in this case, Arbeit, Freiheit und Brot, work, freedom and bread. Simple slogans that people can really buy into and remember, okay, and they can also target them at different people. The Nazis also used newspapers. We already know they owned one, such as Der Stürmer, to spread their message around. And what they also do is they make a deal with a guy called Alfred Hugenberg, who again is a rich businessman who doesn't like communism. And part of this deal is they can use his cinema chains. So he owns lots of cinemas, which is a big thing at this time because most people didn't have their own TVs. All right, well, they didn't have their own TVs. So people would go see a film, and before the film, whereas these days we might get trailers, if you went to one of Hugenberg's cinemas, you might see a Nazi propaganda film before your movie started. So you would be getting those Nazi ideas. On top of that, they make use of the SA. They have these rallies just to show how many people supported the Nazis, to show their organisation and their discipline, and try and push their message every way they can. Finally, the other big thing that helps the Nazis is organisation. Okay, so we talked about during the lean years, they put a lot of work into trying to kind of maximise the Nazi party organisation across Germany. So they divided the country into Gau, 35 districts. Each Gau has a local leader called a Gauleiter. And what that means is they can tailor and target their message to individual areas. So, for instance, if you live in an area with lots of factories, they can really push all their message about sort of the workers and helping with jobs and things like that. On the other hand, if it's an area with lots of farmers and agriculture, they can push that message. They're going to help the farmers. They can push whatever message suits the local area, which means they can target as many people as possible. And that is basically the Nazi secret. You want to make your message as flexible and broad as it possibly can be so that lots of different people, no matter who they are in society, want to support it. Okay, so for instance, you can see here, this one's aimed at women. Women, for the sake of your children, vote for Adolf Hitler. Over here, one aimed at the workers. We workers are awakened. All right, they've got lots of, that they try and broaden it out as much as they can so that all different groups are going to see it and be enticed. So your main task for today is you've got a table that looks like this. If you can't print the sheet off, just put these headings in your book. So Konrad Mielke, big business owners, etc. And then what you've got is you've got a bunch of different character cards. And this is a different sort of representative, they're fictional, but a different sort of person, supposedly from each group, talking about their view and why they're supporting the Nazis. And they're all going to have lots of different reasons, so think about what they're afraid of, think about what they want, think about their position. So if we look at this lady, my son has lost his job and my family is terribly poor. There's one reason to vote Nazi. You're really suffering from the war, from the Great Depression. I went to one of Hitler's rallies today and I was really impressed with the way he spoke. He was engaging and got the crowd excited about his message. There's another reason. Hitler himself is appealing to her. She likes the sound of this guy who's great at speaking and really exciting. My husband reads the newspaper every day and has also shared with me lots of Nazis' ideas and policies, which I really like. We hear them on the radio too. So she's also being suckered in by that propaganda, the newspapers, the radio. All of that is convincing her too. So even in that one paragraph, we've got 3 different reasons why this lady wants to vote Nazi. And that's what you need to try and work out for every character, as many bullet points as possible as to what it is about them that means they want to vote for the Nazis. Okay, what do they like? What do they want? What are they afraid of? What is it about the current situation that causes them to want to vote Nazi? Okay, so that is your main job today. I've sent you all an email about sort of Zoom lessons to try and do those once a week. So please make sure you have looked at that and you've made a note of the time, because we'll try and do that regularly after half term. And I will speak to you all very soon. Thank you.